Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. Hope you all had a wonderful Christmas holiday weekend. And now we're back to the news. I'm going to have several episodes for you today, so you'll have to kind of stand by. Mail here with news in it that I need to go through. So we'll bring you about a half a dozen articles or so at a time and try to keep you updated on what transpired here in the last few days. In this episode, I have 6 articles for you. The first one is off of BizPack Review, and it says, Legal loophole lets feds delete tons of official records. A loophole in federal law allows or Environmental Protection Agency employees and other federal workers to get away with deleting millions of official records created by using cell phone text messages, according to government transparency experts. The Federal Record Act, or the FRA, and EPA policy allow individual employees who create cell phone text messages to decide whether a particular one constitutes a federal record before deleting or preserving it. That makes it difficult to say EPA employees violated FRA when they archive only 86 out of 3.1 million text messages as official business documents sent and received in 2015. That's clearly a conflict of interest, says Chain Mandelbaum, counsel for nonprofit government watchdog Energy and Environmental Legal Group. Mandelbaum's group focuses on transparency and accountability issues in the federal government. My feeling is that it's far more likely than not that the law was circumvented. It's just impossible to prove because you lack the evidence. Mandelbaum, who has worked on legal cases involving the EPA's records retention issues, told the Daily Caller News Foundation. The idea that there were no federal records destroyed seems very questionable to me, Mandelbaum added. Federal records and transparency experts say it's naive to believe EPA officials followed federal law and policies and lost no vital information by properly preserving so few texts and allowing senior EPA officials to configure phones to automatically delete texts after 30 days. In a Wednesday EPA Office Inspector General IG report, which claimed no officials intentionally circumvented federal law in failing to archive millions of records. But the EPA's staggeringly low number of preserved texts presents another problem, said James Valvo, Senior Policy Advisor for nonprofit watchdog Cause of Action Institute, or CAFA. CAFA is a frequent Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, filer. If employees are chronically using government-issued phones to conduct personal business, that's misuse of federal property, says Valvo. People's personal phones, Valvo told the DCNF. So if people are sending 3 million personal texts on government phones, that's a problem. The National Archive and Records Administration, NARA, which is responsible for implementing FRA, says that electronic messages received in the course of an agency's business are federal records. EPA policy says that employees who generate and receive records are legally required to maintain them, and any substantive or non-transitionary communications, messages that are still relevant after 180 days, should be transferred to the records management system. As the IG noted in its report, that system includes text. In February of 2015, the EPA updated its records management policy, which details the agency's requirements for handling electronic messages, such as text messages, as electronic records, the IG report said. The policy states that EPA staff that generate and receive records are legally required to maintain them, and the policy further requires electronic records such as substantive or non-transitionary text messages to be transferred to an electronic records management system, the report said. An employee from deleting text at his own discretion, Mandelbaum said. Generally, truly transitionary records aren't required to be preserved, but the problem all too often is that fuzzy, and the decision-making is given over to the people whose interest in transparency is the least, Mandelbaum said. That, of course, creates a problem for the Freedom of Information Act requesters, said Patrice McDermott, executive director of OpenTheGovernment.org. We are concerned with any practices for records retention that allow employees discretion in deciding what is deleted, McDermott told the DCNF. McDermott said communicating via cell phone text messages inherently creates problems for accessing public records. And then there is an insert here. It says, related, EPA will take 100 years to answer conservative groups' FOA requests. And the article goes on and says, the problems encountered with enforcing the rules on electronic means of communicating when doing the business of government are similar to those when government officials rely on the phone instead of putting anything in writing, McDermott said. It could be inattention or evasion, and the risks are multiplied when the officials use their personal devices rather than agency-supplied and locked ones, she said. Valvo compared the discretion EPA employees have with text to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's discretion in deciding which emails to turn over to federal investigators during the scandal involving the private servers she used while conducting official business. The Clinton scandal was complicated, multiple classified documents, and handling which is covered by additional laws and regulations. The IG stood by its report saying did not find evidence of wrongdoing. The OIG did not find evidence that the senior officials violated any federal laws and was not able to determine whether any senior officials broke any laws, Jeffrey Legata, spokesman for the IG, told the DCNF. Mandelbaum said the IG is skirting the issue by saying employees did not intentionally violate federal law. I think that's just skirting the issue, and that's exactly the problem because federal employees are supposed to be thoroughly educated on the public records laws, Mandelbaum said. Valve expressed concerns over IG's use of Tekken 2. The IG report found IG's office sent on received more than, we'll try that one again. The IG report found the IG office sent or received more than 70,000 texts in that same period. An article that I have for you is off of zerohedge.com, and it says, I get it to scroll up here a little bit. Well, come on, hamster. Hamster's moving slow. Well, okay, we'll try to reload the page, see if that helps the hamster any. Maybe he needs prodded a little bit. Poor little hamster, he's got the Christmas blues, I think. Maybe he had too much eggnog. Come on, hamster, poor little thing. Legs. For goodness sakes. All right. Now he's trying. Okay. Well, okay. Top ex-White House economist admits 94% of all jobs under Obama were part-time. Just over 6 years ago, in December of 2010, we wrote Charting America Transformation to a Part-Time Worker Society, in which we predicted and showed that in light of the underlying changes resulting from the Second Great Depression, masked by trillions in monetary stimulus, and soon, perhaps fiscal America is shifting from a traditional workforce, one where the majority of new employment is retained on full-time basis, to a gig economy, where workers are severely disenfranchised and enjoy far less employment leverage and perks than their pre-crash peers. It also explains why, despite the 4.5 unemployment rate, which the Fed has erroneously assumed is indicative of job market at capacity. Wage growth not only materialized, but as we showed yesterday, the growth in real disposable personal income was the lowest since 2014. And they have some charts in this one. All these URLs, of course, are in the description of the video if you want to pull them up and take a look at some of this. It says, when we first penned our article, it was dubbed fringe tinfoil hattery or vernacular fake news. Fast forward 6 years when a report by Harvard and Princeton economists Lawrence Katz and Alan Kruger confirms exactly what we warned. In their study, the duo showed that from 2005 to 2015, the proportion of American workers engaged in what they refer to as alternative work soared during the Obama era from 10.7% in 2005 to 15.8% in 2015. Alternative or gig work is defined as temporary help agency workers, on-call workers, independent contractors, or freelancers, and is generally unsteady without fixed paycheck and with virtually no benefits. The two economists also found that each of the common types of alternative work increased from 2005 to 2015, with the largest changes in the number of independent contractors and workers provided by contract firms such as janitors that work full-time at a particular office but are paid by a janitorial service firm. Kruger, who until 2013 was also the top White House economist serving as chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under Obama, was surprised by the finding. Quoted by Quartz, he said, "We find that 94% of the net job growth in the past decade was in the alternative work category," said Kruger. Percent was due to the rise of independent contractors, freelancers, and contract workers. In other words, nearly all of the 10 million jobs created between 2005 and 2015 were not traditional 9-to-5 employment. While the finding is good news for some designers and lawyers who hate going to an office, for whom new technology and Obamacare has made it more appealing to become an independent contractor, but for those seeking a steady administrative assistant office job, the market is grim. It also explains why, despite an apparent recovery in the labor market, wage growth has been non-existent due to the lack of career advancement and salary increase options for this vast cohort, which was hired over the past decade. The decline of conventional full-time work demographic. Whether this change is good or bad depends on what kinds of jobs people want. Workers seek full-time steady work have lost, said Kruger, perhaps sarcastically, that while many of those who value flexibility and have a spouse with a steady job have probably gained. Yes, well, spousal support aside, it also confirms another troubling finding this website reported first earlier this month, namely that the number of multiple job holders has recently hit the highest number in this century. Not surprisingly, the study found that young worker represented the largest growth of contractors who frequently do not receive any kind of benefits, even when they are working full-time. It's frustrating to employees in the entertainment industry, where media conglomerates rely on freelancers for long periods of time without offering any benefits, an arrangement frequently referred to as permalance. None of these qualitative aspects, however, matter to the outgoing president, who believes his administration was a net positive for workers. Since I signed Obamacare into law in 2010, our businesses have added more than 15 million new jobs, said Obama during his farewell press conference last Friday. He did not delve into the details of just what those 15 million jobs were. Now we know, and we also know why the Fed is making a huge mistake in thinking it can hike rates and tighten financial conditions to reserve engineer wage growth when corporations are guaranteed to not increase wages even in response to higher rates. As the data above confirms, slack in the economy is vastly greater than the virtually all economists are willing to admit. The next article I have for you is off of LibertyWritersNews.com, and it says Donald Trump just hired one man who can destroy Obama's legacy. Donald Trump has made a lot of big hires to his White House since getting elected, but not one of them can begin to compare to the legend he just brought down to take down Obama's terrible legacy. Today, Trump's transition team announced that he has brought on none other than Icahn, the legendary investor himself, to be his special advisor on regulations. Icahn himself, known for his business savvy, released a glowing statement outlining his ambitions for America's future. And it says, I am proud to serve President-elect Trump as special advisor on regulatory reform. Under President Obama's Under President Obama, America's business owners have been crippled by over $1 trillion in new regulations and over 750 billion hours dealing with paperwork. It's time to break free of excessive regulation and let our entrepreneurs do what they do best, create jobs and support communities. President-elect Trump is serious about helping American families, and regulatory reform will be a critical component of making America work again. As an American business owner myself, God, things are finally starting to look up again for entrepreneurs and workers as playing the field will finally begin to level out. Under Obama's iron-fisted rule, small businesses have been stifled, while the top dogs of big corporations with connections to the White House have flourished. This would have continued under Clinton, except way worse, but now we have President Trump. So welcome to the new America, a place where we can be proud to work and call. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so a place we can be proud to work in and call how as we rebuild. That's supposed to be home, I think, as we rebuild our nation on the framework created by our founders and restore our country to greatness. And there is video in this if you want to pull that one up, take a look at the video. The next one I have for you is off of the gatewaypundit.com, and it says, cracker. F. Donald Trump, armed Black Panthers march in Milwaukee. And there's video in this if you want to pull it up to take a look at that. And here's how it reads. Armed new Black Panthers marched to Milwaukee, Wisconsin this week in the bitter cold. We are not saying we shall overcome today. We are saying we shall overgun. F. Donald Trump, F. Hillary too, but F. Donald Trump. Excerpts from the 40-minute march on December 18th of 2016. And there's more video, and there's tweets, and more video, and all that, so that you have the basic gist of that. If you want to pull that up and check out the videos in that, you're welcome to do so. The next one we have is off of BizPac Review, and it says, college student driven out of school for backing Trump, out of control hostility, unbearable harassment. Freshman student Brian Maurer College has dropped out after what she says was unbearable harassment from her fellow students for supporting President-elect Donald Trump. In September, shortly after starting at the Pennsylvania Women's School, Andy Mortz made a post on the Brian Maurer ride-sharing Facebook page, asking if anybody wanted to accompany her to a Saturday spent campaigning for Trump. Mortz said she wanted another girl along to ensure her safety since she was carpooling with a man she didn't know. The request turned out to be a big mistake, as Mortz was bombarded with hundreds of comments from her fellow students, most of them extremely hostile. Nobody has the right to an opinion of bigotry. Zero tolerance for fascist, one comment said, according to Philly.com. Why y'all doing this free labor for white supremacists, though? Another said. Students on Mort's floor held a meeting about the content of her post. After a discussion, she took it down entirely. Mortz told the English House Gazette, a Bryn Mawr student blog, that a low point came when she was approached by a peer mentor in her dorm who, instead of offering support, began to vilify her. The peer mentor said Mortz had personally attacked other students by expressing support for Trump. Mortz told Philly.com the response was so hostile she ended up calling a suicide hotline for support. Later, she visited a campus counselor who said she wasn't very helpful. She basically defended the people who had said mean things to me, she told the English House Gazette. Just a few days after the Facebook post, Mortz decided to drop out of Bryn Mawr. She says when she told the school dean about it, the dean appeared relieved and made no effort to convince her to stay. The backlash apparently wasn't limited to Mort's. Anna Margilgo, who wrote the English House Gazette article that first told Mortz's story, told Philly.com she has also been harassed simply for writing the article. It was me speaking up about an event that honestly shouldn't have happened on a college campus like Burn Mauer, said Garligo, who herself voted for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. It just makes me scared in terms of where we're headed for the youth of this country. Can't understand how to respectfully disagree. For the time being, Mortz is working at an animal shelter and considering starting again at a different college in the area. And the final article in this episode is off of Sputnik News, and it says, #CalExit, California succession claim to have open embassy in Moscow. Last weekend, a group of Californians seek to succeed from the U.S. established an embassy in Moscow ahead of statewide CalExit vote in 2018. San Diego resident Louis Martinelli, who leads the Yes California Independence campaign, told the LA Times, "We want to start laying the groundwork for a dialogue about the independent California joining the United Nations now. For the Golden State to become independent Republic of California, it would have to be approved by voters in 2018, after which it could go to special referendum in 2019 if it receives 500,000 signatures." Martinelli, who currently works as an English teacher in Moscow, said that he is not fazed by the obstacles his organization faces. He said, "All major social and political movements in this country take time and inevitably have to overcome failures and setbacks before they are ultimately successful." During a press conference on Sunday, Martinelli explained that the embassy would focus on promoting tourism, building trade relationships, and educating Russians about California's many cultures instead of serving as a diplomatic institution. We're certainly going to request recognition of our independence and recognition of our 2019 independent referendum result, as we're going to request that the entire international community recognizes the results, he said, according to the RT, adding, "We're opening up a conversation in Russia, and it's to a much smaller degree to the Americans. When they wanted their independence from the British Empire, they went and pursued military assistance and so on and so forth. We're not doing anything like that." The CalExit movement began in earnest in late November when Yes California first proposed the ballot measure for the 2018 vote. Members of the two-year-old organization are frustrated with paying more money to Washington than California receives in federal spending and point out the many cultural differences that make the state's continued presence in the U.S. untenable. In our view, the United States of America represents so many things that conflict with the Californian values, and our continued statehood means California will continue subsidizing the other states to our own detriment and to the detriment of our children, according to their website, adding that this charity is given to the detriment of California's infrastructure and schools. However, this independent referendum is about more than California subsidizing other states of this country. It's about the right to self-determination and the concept of voluntary association, both of which are supported by constitutional and international law. So there you have this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, share it around so people get to hear the real news. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you haven't already, and click that little bell beside the subscribe button and check the little box so that you get emails every time I put out an episode. There's going to be a mess of them today to catch up all the news that we had here over the last few days. So we'll see you in the next episode.